Flex your business with an American Express Business Gold Card. You'll earn 4 times membership rewards points on your top 2 eligible spending categories, like transit and electronics, each month, on up to $150K in combined purchases per year. Plus, you can now earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at AmericanExpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold, built for business by American Express.
News team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carey, Josh, Eddie, and
George. All right, welcome back. It is another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here from the Soonerscoop.com studios on historic Campus Corner. And we welcome in Josh McCuistion, Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya, and I am Carey Murdoch. And it's been a busy week. We've had practice. We've had pro day yesterday. But first, we have to... George, I want to apologize to you for last week because I think it came off like I'm yelling at you about the whole, being excited about the rowback stuff. George is just now getting into the pod.
Sorry, I was having a little snack.
By the way, real quick,
it did come off.
You had a very long conversation with somebody very interesting before the show.
Yeah, I spoke to Reagan Beers' dad, Ike Beers. Just an awesome interview with him, and hopefully going to be able to write a pretty good story on her next week before the NCAA tournament. But I won't share too many details, so hopefully people will read it on Soonerscoop.com. But just a really cool story, and pretty ironic that family's not a big drinking family, despite the last name.
It's crazy.
I'd still take the money from the beer companies.
Yeah,
he looked very intense in the.
He's a police officer.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not crazy. It seems like that lines up.
Yeah, he was in the military. He was in the Navy for several years out of high school.
Wow! And then, right out of high school. That's awesome.
And then joined the police force.
Is he originally from Colorado?
You know what? I don't know if that came up. I don't think so. I think he's from Illinois.
Okay.
I
Usually you see those military
Illinois.
families kind of not displaced, but move around the country quite a bit.
But just a really cool family, and I think I'm going to talk to Rocky Beers, her brother, as well, maybe for the story. So just a cool story that hopefully people will check out.
No, I'm looking forward to that. I mean, that's why we brought you on board, is to have great feature stories like that. And I think we'll get into some of the stuff. You got some information on coaching salaries and stuff like that this week that was kind of interesting, along with all the practice stuff. But here's the thing, Josh, I wanted to bring you in on this discussion. As the co-owner of the company, these two that we have working for us got some not troubling information. I don't want to make it out like I'm always bagging on you guys or yelling at you, but I'm actually very proud of George Stoya. He mounted a television into brick. Yeah. No, which I've never done. I've never mounted anything into brick before.
Yeah.
But Josh, you are a guy that has a lot of tools. You've also done dumb things like drill into a gas line. That I think wrecked your life for like a week.
Oof.
I think it was before a pod too.
And it was right before, like 2 days before New Year's. So like everybody was going on holiday. It was a whole rush to actually get heat back into our house in the middle of December. And so that was good.
But and I can get, you have 2 girls. You got to do some manly stuff. You got to have some stuff of your own. And I would imagine your dad, when you were growing up, was he a guy that did a lot of stuff around the house? And
no, where I got that from was my grandfather. Like he was the guy that like at 85 still wouldn't let anybody mow his yard. Like, I mean, like he was that kind of like manly old, he's ex-military, that kind of stuff. But I have done the mounting into brick, and it is like you've got to be real careful how you do it and where you put it, because it can just fall apart if you get too aggressive with it. So is that's a nice early move from George Stoia.
But it comes on the heels of him basically his entire life, he has been taught to hire everything out. And you do not want to put, he is refusing to put a TV on the wall in the living room.
Well, not refusing. I will probably end up doing that now. Now that I know how kind of easy it is. And I had a bad
second thought since we had this conversation.
Well, I've had a bad mindset of not trying. Like I was just like, oh, we'll just hire somebody to do that. But I think after doing the one on the backyard, it really wasn't that hard. I figured it out. Within 30 minutes.
That's way harder than finding a stud in a wall and drilling four holes.
But part of it is having the tools, though, Carey.
Yeah.
Like having
that's the other thing. That's the other thing.
Stuff. Yeah.
Josh, even when you were in college, did you not have a power drill somewhere, or at least a power screwdriver or something?
No, I really didn't.
Okay.
I it wasn't until when I bought my house when I was probably, so that'd have been like 06. So like I was like 25. And that's when I was like, okay, I got to start figuring some stuff out.
And now, you probably went to Harbor Freight or somewhere shitty and just got something cheap.
Kind of.
Or
the advantage I did have is my brother. Like we've talked about, like he's a home remodel guy. So like he was like, you will buy Milwaukee, you will buy Makita. Like he was very like, we're not going to buy bullshit. And so Harbor Freight is like I go in there and I like mess with stuff and I'm like, I could never buy this. I just can't make myself do it. So hopefully a future sponsor, Harbor Freight, now that we've given them our vote of approval.
You're not going to go in and get that manual engine, crank and, risk your life from the Harbor Freight version of that so you can save $100.
It's like the plane that's made from the cheapest materials possible. You're like, well, this feels safe. We should all be great here.
So anyway, but George does not own any power tools. Of course, he's not a homeowner. He's living downtown, the big city life. Mm-hmm. But he had to go rent a drill from Home Depot to do the job. Wouldn't you say that was your first indication about maybe I should buy one? Maybe I should just buy one.
See, George, I feel like we're just talking about you and not getting to weigh in at all. Like, that's what I did. That was my rule. Like, if I needed something, that's when I bought it. Like, I didn't just go buy to buy. But like, okay, I need this. Okay, I'll buy it because it's something I can use down the road.
Now, did you rent a hammer drill or just a power drill?
Just a power drill.
Okay.
And I talked to the people at Home Depot, what exactly I needed specifically to get it done. But my fiance, Erin, she has a smaller power drill. So I just didn't think that we needed to buy a big, huge power drill. Now, eventually, I'm sure we'll get one when we need one for more things, and I suggested maybe we just buy one, but ended up just renting it. It was like $20, and I was just like, well, and it only took us 30 minutes to use it. So I didn't think it was any big deal. Did you have to
buy the Mason bit?
Yeah, I had to buy the Mason bit, which that was only a few bucks, but it really was not hard.
It's not
to
hard.
do.
I put up like 20 TVs in here.
I felt very accomplished at the end. I was like, man, that was great.
No, George, I would say is like an early, home improvement move. That's a pretty good start. Like I can tell you that's more complicated than my first one. But again, man, if you're ever having trouble, talk to me. I've dropped fans on like my bed as I was sleeping in it. Like I've had plenty of debacles as I learned my way through this crap. So
yeah, I would say
there is absolutely zero shame.
The one household thing that you might be scared of doing that's actually really easy is replacing a ceiling fan.
Yes.
You just have to have the ladder.
Yeah.
So if you're in the Home Depot or something, Aaron says, "Oh, I really like that ceiling fan," just say, "Okay, well, I'll install it for you. You can do it."
Yeah. Well, I'll keep that in mind, Josh. I'll make sure to call you because I'm gonna move in with Aaron here soon, and her house is 100 years old, and it's a great house, so I love it. But I'm sure we'll be doing some projects in the house, so I'll call you up.
One of my first things I remember doing with Tiffany, George, was like I went over to she had just moved into a house. We were dating for probably 5 or 6 months, and she moved into a house closer to me, and she needed to hang up all her pictures and stuff. And I had a drill, but it was not good. And so I ended up using hers, and I covered it. I was like, oh yeah, I don't want to drive back over and get mine. I'll just use yours. Literally the next day I went out and bought myself a new drill. I was like, I cannot be in that position again.
Yeah. So I think we might, we also were talking, we might put one on our registry. I feel like that's something.
I'll buy it for you.
You know, there's a lot of stuff.
Put a level on there too, and I'll buy that for you.
Going through, well, we have a level, but honestly, a lot of these things that you buy now, like the mount, came with a level to make sure that it's whatever. But the
a stud finder.
There's a lot of going through the registry stuff, which Erin's she did all of that. There's not a lot of stuff on there that excites me, but if we put on a nice power drill, that would get me a little excited, even though I don't know what I would use it for, because I've now only used a power drill once in my life. But I do think it'd be nice to have one, a nice good one.
And this is how it begins, George.
I cannot believe
this
how
is where
far
it all starts from.
You've come in the last 24 hours. I have never been more proud.
Yeah, I'm ambitious. I'm ambitious.
Man, that's the beautiful thing now. Like YouTube, like I don't care how complicated it is, there is someone on YouTube who can give you a pretty good description of how to freaking do it.
Yeah,
I convinced myself I was an electrician just watching YouTube videos.
Oh, see, now
I won't mess with that.
I never followed through. I may have went and bought some Romax and stuff like that, but never followed through. And the only reason I did it is because I called one of those big name electric companies, and they quoted me like $3,000 to install a 220 outlet. And I was like, I know that's not right.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, see, my father-in-law, who obviously lives down here near us, like he can do all that stuff, like installs boxes and all. And I'm like, great, we need a new one for our refrigerator in the garage. Like, put that in there, and he'll just do it. I'm like, great, so I don't have to learn how to do that. I'm not messing with it.
Eddie, you ever mount a TV?
Don't bring Eddie into this. You know he wants nothing to do with
conversation.
Eddie has been so dismissive. I wish people had video. There's been no interest in.
I'm watching basketball.
Eddie has placed 73 bets in the time we started that conversation.
I have not bet any games.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check the Jumbotron first, before attempting to eat a stack of Supreme nachos in one bite. Now you're just a meme that everyone shares on game day. Checking first is smart, so check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
No, I knew we were going long. I'm sorry, Eddie. I know you have no interest in that conversation whatsoever.
I will let the record show. You can start listening now.
Well, he does the rundown, so that's exactly what it will say. Anyway, you talked to, real quick, Jim Nagy this morning, Eddie.
Yeah, he's on his way to Norman officially, making the 12-hour drive from Mobile. We had him on the radio. And, it was basically like going through the press conference again that we had last week. But I'm very interested. He did say that they are, maybe this is one of the things he just says, but he said that they're getting closer to putting together the front office. And I'm super interested to see where these people come from, how many there are, and like just what the, I don't know, like the titles, not necessarily the titles, but what's each person going to be responsible for within this front office.
And I would think until you get some clarity from the NCAA on exactly what a scout does. I mean,
he mentioned that this morning, that a lot of, not necessarily the hires are going to be predicated on what the decision is from the NCAA, but more so the guidelines on what they can be allowed to do, kind of.
Well, and that's the interesting thing too, is in what I said was, we first had the pod last week, I guess it was last week, like it's a little bit of a calculated gamble by OU because you don't know what you can do versus what Kirby Smart, has decided to do, which is just like, screw all that stuff. I'm in charge. Like,
yeah. I told you too, though, that I think it's going to be super fascinating, and not to say that Georgia's going to fall off, but I do think that when you're talking about Kirby, this is a situation that he just doesn't want somebody to come in and disrupt what they have going on, and who's to blame him? But I do think there's a little bit of ego there that, this is my show. I don't want somebody else to come in and run it. Or at least that's how it looks from the outside.
I think, too, he's clearly going to be the head coach and GM without the title. And I'm sure they have at Georgia.
That happens.
Yeah, and I'm sure at Georgia, too, they have the personnel staff to help with a lot of that stuff. But Kirby also strikes me as the type of guy that wants to be in charge of all that.
Well, and let's be fair, maybe to be fair to Kirby, Georgia has had one of the largest staffs in college football.
And maybe they already have that in place. They don't have to go rebrand it and say this is a front office.
To be fair to Kirby, they've won several national championships and have been the standard in college football the last 5 or so years now, whereas Oklahoma clearly isn't up to par, and they need help. That's that's the other part of it.
I think both can be true.
You can also say that this past season's proved that Georgia has some shortcomings, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, the receiver position. If you had somebody in charge of your roster management there, maybe they'd be in a better position there.
Well, and you could argue, guys, that part of why Oklahoma got into this space is they didn't keep up when Nick Saban was hired at Alabama, when Georgia hired Kirby Smart to keep adding all these staff members. Well, OU's done that. Now they've caught back up. Now is what they're doing going to become the new kind of standard? Like, that's how people operate. And does Georgia then fall a little bit behind at that point? And again, we don't know. I'm not saying that Georgia's making a catastrophic mistake or anything, but this is how you get, to me, this is when teams that are like, oh, well, they're going to be good forever, start falling into trouble, is when they're just like, well, we're not doing that. Like, we are not going to be open to these new ideas, because you get stuck in a way of doing things. And OU did in the 80s, 90s, and Bob had to bring it up to level. And then once Bob became so solid and they knew, year in, year out, he's going to win 10 games in the Big 12, I think there was a reluctance to be like, well, what changes do we really need to make? Look at all the success we're having.
Well, and can you imagine OU just hiring someone that was not a football coach, was not an assistant, didn't really directly recruit, didn't go out on the road, all that stuff, and pay them $750,000? Or was it $775,000? I can't remember, George.
What was the question?
Nagy's salary.
$750,000.
Yeah.
It increases $100,000 annually.
But to have someone like that on the staff, like, OU wasn't going for that. They were just like, no way. But this shows you that they've really, finally said, okay, we have to adapt to this stuff.
And again, like, I think, guys, like, people will be like, well, to me, so much of how this plays is how coaches respond to this. Like, do they like this model where they can have a little more time? They don't have to do all the first evaluations and watch all this tape. They can get an idea from these front office types of, okay, this is who we think we should look at. These are the guys we think can fit into our mold, what you guys are looking for. Now you go and recruit and evaluate. Okay, great. Or do coaches, like, even though they've said for years now, man, there's not enough time, we're getting killed, like, we don't have the energy for this. Is it hard when they have to relinquish a little bit of that control and that first evaluation? Is that something they're willing to do? I think it'll be the former. I think coaches will embrace this given a little time, but change is always hard at first.
And I think, it's been one of those deals too, where when the money guys can see, okay, this is where it's going, we want to be leaders in this space, we're willing to fund this. We're willing to fund the staff for the personnel department. Like, it makes it easier. But when you're the first to do something like that, like you said, Josh, and you're winning, it's really hard to get people motivated to give you the money to do that stuff when you've never done it before. And you could kind of say the same thing, I think, about look at the Hoops program. Like, I think that this has not been Joe Castiglione's way of saying spend money to make money. But clearly, with basketball, like, you look at the in-game atmosphere versus, like, going to a Thunder game, like, they're not spending a whole lot of money on the marketing side of it or the in-game entertainment and things like that. Like, they could be doing a much better job. And if people were more entertained at basketball games, even in the timeouts, even if you did, the look-alike cams and all that stuff, like, that's a better experience. It makes it more fun to go to a game, and it makes you want to go back again. It just feels like with basketball, it just is kind of gotten so stale, and then you're not winning, so it's not attracting people that just want to bring their kids to the game. I mean, I think there's a lot of different areas that the athletic department can look at and say, look, we need to overhaul, we need to revamp, we need to spend more money in areas that we haven't been comfortable spending in the past. And the crowd goes silent, as usual. Carey went off on a rant. Okay, so...
What?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the help. So anyway, Pro Day was yesterday. Let's start off, though. We've done some practice reports, but we all got to go out and see a second practice in the sunlight. I think Eddie and I kind of do the same thing. Like, if we get really hyper-focused on one group, one practice we lose out on some, and so we go to another one. Like I went over to the offensive line first. I
think we about flipped because I was with linebackers, defensive backs,
and I spent a lot of time
most
with
of
them
the time.
First practice, yeah. And not as much with the defensive line, as I did in the first practice, but I went over to the linebackers, the safeties. I mean, I know you thought it was pretty interesting, Eddie, just watching what guys were working with both the linebackers and the safeties.
Yeah, Reggie Powers was working a little bit with the linebacker group, which, I think he's been kind of flipping in between that and working with the cheetah position. It was interesting. I will say it was a little bit spiritual walking out there and seeing Kevin Wilson hovering around the offensive line sled. That was pretty cool. I thought that was awesome. And I think that's a situation, too, that, Troy Everett talked about it a little bit on Monday. I think he's going to be somebody that is a really nice addition. I don't know how much it changes. Obviously not going to make guys just completely better, but I do think having him a part of that offensive line group is going to be a good thing.
That was one question that we didn't really get to ask Brent about either at the press conference. I was hoping we'd get his thoughts on adding Kevin Wilson to the staff, because I agree. I think he's going to be an awesome addition.
And I was right there with you, Eddie. It was almost surreal seeing Kevin Wilson back on the practice field.
It was cool. I liked it.
And he was just, the time I was over there, he literally, Josh, was just sitting there watching Michael Fasusi like a hawk.
Because Carey, he's one of my really foundational memories of the days when we could still go to practice and cover. I don't even know if you and I were working together at that point in time. I know we were obviously both there. But I was going, funny enough, I was going on behalf of the sports animal.
You
I
were
was
an
going
intern at
with
the sports
them.
animal, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the funny way that goes. But I remember he was just the guy that when during breaks in practice would come over and just always had something to say. I remember invariably they had these cans that looked like Bud Lights. It was some kind of energy drink, and he was like, "I wish this was a cold one," or something like that. And you're like, "Yeah, He was just so easy to get along with.
He was waiting until he went over to O'Connell's because I'd run in there I'd run into him over there on pitcher and a pizza night over at the old O'Connell's there on the corner of Lindsay. He'd get some food to go and take a to-go drink with him.
That is not hard to believe.
It was On the Border was one of his hangouts, which is really strange. Back in the day.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Oh, yeah. That's been on around the corner recently, yeah. I think everybody ends up realizing, though, Charleston's is where you want to hang out.
I don't know about hang out. If you want to go eat dinner.
Oh, in the bar. I mean, it's a good place to hang out.
Can't say I've ever hung out in a Charleston's bar.
But they got the booze back there and everything in Norman.
Yeah, I think there's probably other bars to hang out at if you're going to a bar. Mahogany would be a good bar in downtown.
I think though, if you're a coach at OU, you kind of just want to be left alone, and Charleston's is a good place for that.
I don't know. I don't know if I can condone that.
Anyway, but no, it's great seeing him out there. Also, I can't help but think this has been such a good change for Kendall Daniels. Now we'll find out next season, but just watching the way he interacts with guys, and he just always seems like he's smiling. It's like. I watched him play a lot last year. He looked like a guy that was totally checked out, needed a change of scenery.
I think the tape would agree with that too.
Yeah.
There was some bad tape out there. It's like, damn, you kind of quit.
But it is interesting. Every player is just so complimentary of him.
Every one of them on the defensive side or the offensive side. And I think that it's going to be super interesting to see how they use him. I know that him just standing next to Billy yesterday at the pro day. He towers over Billy, and Billy's not. I wouldn't say Billy's a small guy.
No, you don't look at him and say, "Oh, he's not that big."
It's crazy.
Yeah, you never. I mean, there's nothing about Billy that's I worry about him in his size in the NFL. No.
I do think the defensive line group, and I know that we talked about it a little bit after the first, or I guess that was on Thursday of last week, so we didn't really talk about it. It's night and day different, just from a body style standpoint. You go out there and. Even some of the guys that are Marcus Strong, I think, still looks like a guy that could end up being somebody before it's all said and done. The kid from New Mexico, how do you pronounce his last name, George? David Ruoa?
I have no idea.
He's massive.
I
don't know if he can play, but he is massive.
He's from Oklahoma City.
From a body style standpoint,
Deer Creek.
It is completely, flipped from what it has been, and I think that's a step in the right direction. Derek Simmons and Luke Baklenko definitely look the part. Good to see Jake Sexton and Jake Taylor back out there this year or this spring and look to be healthy for the first time. I don't know. I'm slightly optimistic to see what they could be, and Trent Wilson certainly looks the part. And then, you have all the other guys that are coming back and, have obviously played and are going to play.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And George, I think that one thing that's interesting and something that you've pointed out is it is interesting all the guys that Brent said were going to be limited, they're all getting a lot more action than we would have thought. I mean, you pointed out today that who was it that was out there Shield Knight.
Yeah, Alex Shield Knight's practicing. I thought he was supposed to be out for a long time. And he doesn't have a brace on or anything unless somebody else is wearing 97
right?
and working with the defensive end group.
Well, is this just a policy? Because I saw the picture George put out. Andy Bass is just hanging out with nothing on, and his is pretty new.
We don't know why they make players dress out. I have no idea. It's something we should ask.
Eli Bowen, there was the photo of him. George probably tweeted it. He's in full uniform on crutches, and the people are just like, why?
I have no idea why they make him dress out like that.
Seems like a Brent thing.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I mean, even also I think I said this on one of our shows the other day, and I put it in some other notes and stuff, but Eli Bowen, it's an ankle. He just twisted it, not broken, no torn ligaments. I think they're just being very precautionary with him. Deion Burks, kind of the same situation. In fact, probably even more precautionary with him than anything. Just, I think it's just a foot thing. And I was even told if there was a game this week, he would be practicing and he would be playing on Saturday. I think it's I think it's kind of what Brent talked about at his press conference. They're being very cautious this spring with injuries and trying to limit some of those.
Oh, it's just that we got a delivery. The water is here. So it's not a broadcast desk, thank God. I thought one other thing, Eddie, that I noticed, and I don't know how much time you spent with the cornerbacks or safeties, but
a little bit. Quarterback's tough because they're in the middle of the field. Yeah. You can't walk over there.
But there are certain guys, and you guys talked about this with Michael Peterson the other day. He shouldn't be in this conversation, but you look at some of the young guys out there. I mean, obviously Corton Guillory, very thin guy.
He's thin, but I think he looks pretty damn good.
Tristan Haynes definitely needs to put on some weight.
Yeah, Malik Hawkins looks like he fits the role. I think that you look over there at that quarterback position, though, and, Jacoby looks great physically. What are you going to get from Gentry? I really don't know, but there's definitely opportunity there if you're a quarterback right now at Oklahoma.
But, yeah, and I think just, I thought maybe Michael Boganowski, was light, but you guys defended him. I went back and watched the sights and sounds, and
he put on
definitely in the lower body. He looks a lot better.
All three of those guys, and they're going to kind of be linked together, I think, for the rest of their career. Michael Boganowski, Reggie Powers, and Jaden Hardy. I think Jaden Hardy, that safety group. I know that we've talked about it, Josh. They look incredible. And then you have Robert Spears-Jennings, that's bigger than all of those guys. It's I have no idea. And then Peyton's not a small guy by any means.
Again, and I know he comes up a lot, but Brandon Hall deserves a lot of credit, man. Yeah. How much that room has changed. That used to be, they've got one good starter and maybe somebody that won't kill him is the other guy. And now it's, you got to find snaps for Jaden Hardy and Boganowski, and Reggie Powers is pushing at Cheetah. And, so you're just man, there's a lot of bodies here that can play. And then again, as you look at the recruiting side of it, Marion Robinson, Eddie. I mean, you talked about him when we were talking about the freshman last week as a guy that was a lot more physically impressive than you expected him to be.
Yep.
And again, that of course forgets Marcus Wimberly. So I mean, again, I just think that's a room that I don't exactly know how it's going to play out, but I don't have a lot of concern about if it's going to play out. I think it's going to be fine. I just don't know what the answer is.
And the fun part about that is give me any of the options. Give me any of the combos that you could throw out there at safety, and I think that you feel pretty good about it. it's just getting every other position to be like that, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, and guys, I mean, like, we forget, and Eddie, I mean, you and I were there that night in the Allen game when Dyer and Allen played. I think people have forgotten a little bit how much talent Peyton Bowen has, like how good he can be when he's right. And I think it's clear he wasn't right last year. I can't remember I think it was a foot thing, wasn't it? Turf toe or something like that? Yeah, he kept
just dealing with some foot issues.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, and I've never had it. I've always heard that's extremely painful. That it sounds like a little thing, but it's a real pain in the ass from everything I've heard. So, but yeah, again, like, you add that, you've got a guy like him that can be truly dynamic. Robert Spears-Jennings, who's an enforcer, and really the first half of last year might have been OU's one of their top 2 or 3 best defenders, played really well. So, I mean, again, there's just a lot of good answers there. To me, the questions I have on the defense are at linebacker and corner. I think everywhere else, OU should be very, very good.
Yeah, I think linebacker, you have to stay healthy. I mean, probably more so than any other position if you want high-end production there. But, Kobe, one thing we haven't said is, like, you noticed it if you really looked last year, but now that Sammy Omosigho has changed to number 7, you really notice just what a freak he is.
I've heard great reviews of him so far moving inside. But, Josh, I wanted to ask you about Taylor Heim.
Yeah.
Have you heard some of the buzz that I've heard on Taylor Heim?
And it's just one of those things where, like, and I don't know how it comes to you, George, but it's kind of like, just keep an eye on this cat. Like, kind of like, not like we're going to sell all in, but like, we think we got something here, that kind of deal. Yeah. And again, guys, I mean, this was a kid, Eddie, was he all-state in basketball? I mean, like, this is a very unique athlete.
I think it was track is where he was pretty good, as well as basketball. I know that he played basketball, but, the entire recruitment was so crazy because, remember, I went to his house out in kind of the west side of Oklahoma City, but obviously Bethany High School. Went out to his house like the night before he signed because it had come together over the course of 2.5 weeks, basically. And, I think that the question for him was always going to be, could he add the weight? And I thought he looked a little bit heavier this time as compared to what he was a year ago, or I guess when he came in during the fall. So it's going to be really interesting. And, I think that if you could do that, and I remember that it was kind of some track speed for a guy that is 6'6", maybe you do have something there. That would be a phenomenal evaluation if he ended up being somebody.
And they're playing him at Cheetah, too.
Yeah, I mean, and somebody was like, well, Josh, why would they get rid of McCullough just to bring him? And I'm like, he is a very different athlete than McCullough. And I don't mean that as a shot at Dasan at all. But this is a guy that can move in space. Like, he has that kind of athleticism. He can drop off. Like, I don't think that's going to be – again, he's 6'5". I don't think you want to put him man-to-man on a slot or anything. But, like, he can do some stuff differently than Dasan. And, again, to the give and take, he's not as big and physical as Dasan when it comes to the run game. So, I mean, like, I'm not saying it's all perfect and you found the perfect weapon here. But I think people look at his height and weight and kind of have this mental picture of who he is, and I think he's a different athlete than people realize.
The other one is Taylor Wine.
I'm telling you, man.
He looks awesome.
I told Carey before you got here today, George, I noticed yesterday at the pro day, and it might have been because Ethan was around, but he just follows Ethan around, him and Chavis. It's like, and, we remember back to like those bowl practices, and we always talked about how Chavis was always on his ass, just yelling at him. I think he knows because they might have something there.
Wanted to tell you guys about one of our great scoopers, NIL guys, sponsors, Cody Drug RX. It's if you are like most people, health is on top of your mind. If you're feeling this way or that way, and you just want to feel better overall, Cody Drug has you covered. One of the most popular pharmacies in Texas. Cody Drug's now proudly helping customers right here in Oklahoma. Because if you're looking to kickstart your weight loss after a quick telehealth visit, Cody Drug can get you a custom GLP-1 weight loss medication in their state-of-the-art sterile lab and then overnight it to your house on ice. That's CodyDrugRx.com. Go check them out. Go to your physician. If you want to switch your your regular pharmacy over to Cody Drug RX. Do it. I mean, he's helping to support the Scoop. He's helping support NIL. And you go to his Instagram page. He's got over 200,000 Instagram followers. Watched some of his stuff the other day, and I realized we have to keep Will Douglas is the owner's name. We have to keep Will Douglas and Joe Jr. away from each other, because if you put them to Joe Jr. is obsessed with supplements and weight and all that stuff and getting stronger. He knows everything. Like, he came in, we had like a package that Will sent us. He's like, "What's this?" And he's like, "Well, it's the new Cody Drug stuff." He just instantly took it all and took it with him home. He was
I
like,
think
"I want
that
this.
had more to
I
do
want
with
this."
you fat fucks are never going to use this stuff.
That is probably true.
I feel like we should get them connected, though. I think that's the opposite.
We need to keep them away from each other. It would be a 3-day conversation.
It's good vision.
You know who else has good vision?
Our friends over at Enjoy. The madness is here, Sooners fans. We think. I don't know. When Wednesday night, then we'll talk. Whether you're witnessing half-court buzzer beaters or planning full-court perennials, Clear Vision is a slam dunk with $500 off LASIK at Enjoy Vision. All you got to do is schedule your free consultation today. Go to enjoyvision.com, the letter N, J-O-Y, vision.com to schedule your free consultation and score $500 off LASIK. Use that money to get into a pool, and then you probably win it and never have to work again. Enjoy Vision. This is where Sooner Scoop LASIKs.
I want to get back to the offensive line a little bit, just because like I said, spent a lot of time over there. And for the most part, it's kind of like the defensive line. It's just like, man, what a really good-looking group of just big dudes. And that's even without, Heath Ozida and Logan Howland out there. But, a lot of people, I think, came away from that viewing and said, man, Ryan Foje, like, what a monster that guy is.
Yeah,
I mean, they were all looking at
great.
Everybody's looking at Michael Fasusi, but then you see this Ryan Foje guy, and everybody's like, whoa.
I think it's because, they're just, I don't know, Josh, would it be fair to say they're just such different body styles? And obviously, Foje's a little bit heavier right now.
They are. Like, I would say, like, and it's one of those things that you look at Ryan, like, his base is bigger, like his legs are bigger, his butt's bigger. Like, I mean, he is a guy, when you talk about pass pro, it makes sense because, like, he's one of those guys, like, he can slide his feet really naturally. Once he sets down and puts that base underneath himself, he's really tough to deal with because he can move with you side to side, but he's so big. And again, he hasn't even really developed the strength yet because, like, he was so. Guys, I remember seeing him at OU summer camp going into his junior year. He was maybe 250, 255. Like, he was very lean. He looked like a basketball player. So and I've heard these reviews from you guys, from other places, and I'm like, holy crap. Like, he has just changed his body dramatically in a couple years' time.
And then I think, just as far as Michael Fasusi is concerned, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. Guy looks awesome. We've talked about it.
Incredible.
I will say this. The one thing, biggest impression that I had of the offensive line is, so we're over there and they're stretching and they're doing all their final stuff, and then they have a big break and everybody runs to their individual, spots. Eddie Pierre-Louis was the first guy, like, just sprinting toward the toward Bill Bedenbaugh's area. Like, he seems like a guy that's really taking, things seriously.
Yeah, and, I think it's going to be kind of fun to see him in, whether it be Fabechi or Heath Ozida. Regardless, he's going to be in play to win a position this spring. And going into the fall, it's going to be exciting if he can make that move. I'm super interested. We asked Troy Everett about who's working behind him at center because I think that is kind of a little bit of a storyline going into, coming out of the spring. And he said they're working a lot of guys. I know that Josh Iasosa had a pretty good first couple days of practice, kind of working behind Troy Everett. And there's no question, too, who the leader of that thing is. And it probably goes back into last year, too, even when he was hurt. But Troy Everett's like the spokesman for the offensive line.
Well, and the other thing, too, is that we really can't ignore it. Jacob Sexton was out there, looked good.
Yeah.
Also, Jake Taylor looked good.
Jake Taylor looks unbelievable. It's just, can he stay healthy?
Yeah.
And that might not be fair because last year was really the first time that he had ever really had
issues,
injuries.
Yeah. But that's the question with both of them. Like, I think they both can play. It's just a matter of, like, at some point, you're like, guys, we talked about the same thing with Gavin Sawchuk this time last year. Like, there comes a point, like, are you going to rely on someone that you're not sure? I mean, it's not their fault. Like, it's not like these guys are doing anything wrong, but I'm going to pencil this guy in. I'm going to give him all the reps in August, and then he goes down with an injury, and then I've got to start all over again. And it's just that I mean, again, like, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm saying that's got to be a consideration.
Well, but I'll say this. I wouldn't include Jacob Sexton in that group. I just think he was a guy that was moved around so much and had to try and help them stabilize that offensive line that it was a disservice to him.
That's fair.
Last year was cruel to him. Like, there's no doubt about it. But he still, I mean, he got hurt. He had the ACL thing against Florida State. I think that cost him so much momentum because he really seemed like he was really coming on at that point in time. And then, obviously, Guyton came in. Or no, it wasn't Guyton. Parks played. Aaron freaking Parks. But yeah, I mean, it was, like I said, it's not like I'm blaming them. It's not like these guys are out doing stupid shit and get hurt or something. You get hurt. It's a violent game. And, you kind of wonder about that. You guys mentioned Jake Taylor. I had heard some people saying maybe he wasn't as big as he needed to be. Did that look right to you, or does he look fine, like he's with everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, he
mass,
looks,
size.
He looks a little bit like, to me, Logan Howland. I mean, but a little bit bigger.
Jake Taylor?
Yeah.
Am I going crazy?
I mean, he's very tall, but he's not. Here, I'll say this. I don't know that he can really fill out being 6'6", like, guys next to him.
Hold on, I've got the roster.
He's 6'6", 300.
Yeah, that's what he's listed at. Again, it was more of he looks lean. Like, he didn't put on, like, maybe they wanted him at 315 and that didn't really happen. And again, that's not I've heard this from somewhere reliable. That was more of a conversation I was having with someone.
I just think he doesn't look like where his weight is. It's not in a bad place. It's just, I don't think he's ever going to be a guy who's like, wow, that dude's stacked.
I thought he looked great. I don't know. Maybe I'm just completely blinded.
I will say, like, Luke Baclinko.
I thought he played well the little he played.
Like, Luke Baclinko, he's 6'6", and he weighs 307. And I remember thinking, like, well, okay, he's played a lot of football. He's, not as big as I thought he might be.
When next to each other, I would have said that Jake Taylor's heavier compared to Luke Baclinko.
Okay.
Yeah.
Derek Simmons, though, I mean,
Derek Simmons is
bigger
like a
than
monster of a human.
Yeah, he is a massive.
6'5", 321. I think Derek Simmons is going to be your starting right tackle. That's my guess.
Interesting. So, okay, that's a good conversation. Like, what does it look like right now, George? Like, or, I mean, any of you all, you saw it. Like, what is the run out?
It's,
in your opinion. Okay, if you didn't see it, then what's your guess of what it looks like right now?
Well, it is. I know what it is. It's Derek Simmons, right tackle, Fabechi Wiwu, right guard, Troy Everett, center, left guard, Eddie Pierre-Louis, and Jacob Sexton, left tackle. That's your first group right now.
That they were running out of practice.
Yes.
Yeah. That's an athletic group, man, with like a good blend of experience and just like, okay, like, because Eddie, I think we all know Eddie could be special if it all comes together.
The second group is, I think, kind of a rotating door. Like, I think Fasusi's gotten some second-team reps at left tackle just to see what he can do. I think Foje's getting some second-team reps at right tackle. I think Luke Baclinko's in that mix. Jake Taylor in that mix. But I think with Howland being out, you kind of have the opportunity, if you're Michael Fasusi, to maybe play quite a bit. And I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks, Josh, by the end of the year, Michael Fasusi might be your starting left tackle. Like, it's just how quickly can he grasp what they're asking him to do, and how can he hold up physically in such a demanding league? But
Eddie's currently showing me video evidence of.
I think he looks pretty good.
I will say this: the thing that I'm most impressed with is that Troy Everett's put on really good work.
Troy Everett's gotten.
Who's
big.
that next to?
That's Hollenbeck. He's massive. I mean,
he's making Hollenbeck look small.
Not in the arms. Hollenbeck's arms.
Well, Hollenbeck's a massive
Hollenbeck's
kid.
thighs and
He's just
arms
thick.
and biceps are much big. I mean, he's 6'6", though. I mean, he's got very long arms.
The problem with that picture, though, Taylor
That's a
looks
video.
good in that picture. He's standing next to centers.
Yeah,
He's
that's fair.
supposed to be a tackle, and it's also, I think he looks like he's a few yards back maybe, but he's taller than both.
He
of them.
has to have the longest arms on the team.
Taylor.
Yeah, I mean,
Jake Taylor?
Yeah.
Really?
I don't think so.
Go back and look at that picture. His arms are like mid
Yeah, I don't know about
guy.
that. I think Foje might have the longest. Foje's
I was
Fasusi.
going to say Ryan or Mike would be my two guesses. They're
Well, yeah,
different
you're talking
kinds
about two
of men.
freshmen.
Logan
I mean-
Howland's long.
yeah. Logan Howland is long.
Yeah.
He does have long arms.
I don't trust any of Carey's opinions after
No,
last
he
year.
just said. He just said he does have long arms, so suck it.
I mean, you're wrong, but he does have long arms.
How is that being wrong?
He doesn't have. I don't think he has the longest arms on the team.
What was it last year that?
Okay, it was. I'm not ashamed to admit. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Just saying, his arms are very long.
I did want a more concerning thing on the offensive line. Who's the backup center?
Yeah, we were talking about that. I don't know. I mean, I know that Troy said Josh Iasosa. I do think that they're working a number of guys over there. I could buy into an idea of maybe a Eddie Pierre-Louis or somebody. I don't know if that's somebody that would be an option there, but I'm sure that they're trying a lot of different guys.
Like who though?
I would think Josh Iasosa. Do you think that they would try Hollenbeck at center, Josh?
I mean, like, I think that's absolutely his eventual position. Like that, I think that's where he'll play.
So those are two.
I don't think they're ready for him now, guys. I've always been interested in Akinkunmi in that kind of position because he's not huge. Like, I mean, he's a big guy, but like relative to some of these guys, he's not like he's not going to be 6'5", 340. Like, or at least I don't think comfortably that's where he lives. And he can move around. He's a good athlete. He's a really sharp kid. So I think like the calls and all that, like I think he could process that information. Now the calls in an English accent, maybe that throws everybody off. I don't know, but I always thought he was an interesting possibility there.
I do think if a center becomes available in the spring portal, if they were to go after one, like somebody from a G5 or FCS or something, somebody with some experience that you can say, hey, come in and be our backup guy. I mean, think about last year and the problems they had there with Troy being out and then Hickman having the issues he did. Like, you can't afford to have to go through that again.
It's just crazy.
Maybe they could find another Troy Everett. Like they got Everett kind of as the guy, the heir apparent to Rame, and they could find something similar.
That would be the perfect situation, right? Get somebody in and say, hey, I know that you're probably not too thrilled about, quote unquote, wasting a year and sitting behind Troy, but A, you could play if he gets hurt, and B, you could be the guy in 2026.
Yep.
Yeah, judging by
That
our
could make a
recent
lot of
center
sense.
history, you're probably going to be a starter at some point this year. By the way, it is crazy how many 6'6" guys they have on the offensive line. Insane.
Guys, like, has there been any more clear pattern than them trying to get so much bigger on the offensive line? Like, I think I'm talking height, mass, like you name it, and it feels like in the last year and a half, like bigger. Like that's all that they're thinking about when they look at some of these guys.
It's the same with the defensive line. I mean, I think it's pretty clear, and I think they know. I mean, it's what Jim Nagy talked about. Like, it's all about body types, and especially in the SEC, like you just need bigger dudes. And this is the best I've felt about the offensive line's depth in a while. Like, I feel like they do have a lot of guys. It's just how's it going to come together, and what does that final five or that best five look like? And they're going to have to. And this can be a conversation for the fall and over the summer, but they're going to have to figure it out quickly, because when Michigan comes to town in week 2, you better have a good idea of who your best five are to go up against that group and Michigan's defensive line.
Josh, I think at 6'6", I don't know if Akinkunmi could really play center. I mean, he's
the last
not
time I
like
stood
he's
next to
not like
Daniel was a while ago.
He's not like a towering looking guy, but I mean, if he really is 6'6", that's going to – I almost think you'd have to, like, almost do a double train Nawiwu and Eddie Pierre and see who comes out on top.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Eddie's athleticism as a center would definitely be interesting. Like, because, I mean, just his ability to move and getting out on the second level, like you would think he would excel at that kind of stuff. But like George, what you were just touching on kind of got me thinking. This does remind me, and again, I know it's a big comparison to make, but it feels a little like 2015 where you had that kind of blend of like, okay, there's some young talent here that's pretty good, and then you had some old heads like Ty Darlington, like some of those kind of guys that were good, solid players. But as time went on, it kind of opened up the idea of like, well, these guys could do some different stuff. And like you've got the Orlando Brown as like a Michael Fasusi type of guy that could be that truly special, So again, I'm talking a couple years down the road where this could go, but you're starting to see them assemble some pieces that are like, okay, these guys could be difference makers.
There's a lot of 2015 parallels with this team.
Yeah. The quarterback, you're right. Going to Tennessee.
The coordinator. Yeah, Knoxville.
Yeah, and speaking of quarterback, I mean, just John Mateer, just seeing him out there. I know there's been a lot of glowing reports about him, but just the command that he has. I mean, it's obvious that he's running that quarterback room on the practice field. It's interesting kind of watching Ben Arbuckle work with those guys too, because they have, their quarterback guru, if you will, that's out there with them. He's the shorter guy, right?
Yeah.
But Arbuckle just kind of just goes all over the place. Which is kind of what Brent's doing right now, too. Like, he was over there with the offense and stuff on Monday.
Yeah, I think the thing with Mateer is I think we know he's going to be good and better than what they had a year ago. It's how good can he be? Like, is he going to be just a good quarterback like a Dylan Gabriel was for OU, or can he be a great quarterback? And that could be the difference between winning 7 or 8 games or 9 or 10 games and competing to get to the playoff. And that's the big question. And I think that goes hand in hand with the guys around him. Like, how good can this offensive line be? How good are these wide receivers? And the receivers, it's, there's been good early reviews of some of these guys, but what does it look like when they actually get out on the field? One position that I think that we have not talked enough about at all is running back. I have no idea what to think of the running back group. I'm just avoiding it, yeah. I have no clue what to think of that group.
I mean, the thing about that group is I don't even really see, they don't have like a third down guy, I don't think. They don't have...
Xavier Robinson?
No, I mean, like, to catch the ball out of the backfield.
Oh.
Well, Xavier Robinson was really good at that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you want that speedy guy, you want a little bit of a change up. And it's just like they have a bunch of guys that, kind of run the ball between the tackles. I mean, maybe Taylor Tatum could be that if he ever holds on to
it. That's here's the question. How good is Taylor Tatum going to be in year 2? Because he's the guy that could to like answer all those questions. Like if he can be the guy that we think he can be, then what we're asking doesn't matter. But like, we know what Gavin Sawchuk is. We know what Javonte Barnes is. To an extent, I think we kind of know what Sam Franklin is. It's, can Taylor Tatum take another step? Can Xavier Robinson, can they just put him on the field? It's like, what's the rotation look like? But I think Taylor Tatum's the one that can be the X factor in that group.
It's almost somewhat incomplete, though. Like, do we know what they have with those guys because of the offensive line that they were running behind a year ago?
I think we know what
I don't think they have a Doak Walker guy, but...
I don't think
very, very good running backs.
I feel like I've seen enough of Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes. Not to say they're bad players and that they can't help for the team, but I think we know what they are at this point in their careers. I think.
I don't know. I would say like incomplete. I just have no idea.
Josh, where do you think Torrey Blaylock would fit into this running back room?
With his speed, he just has an element that, and again, like Tatum can run, Robinson can run, Sawchuk can run. He has a gear that I just don't think anybody else in this room has. And I know Sawchuk was kind of once seen as that same guy. I've never seen that. Like, I've never seen that moment where you're like, holy shit, Gavin Sawchuk just ran away from everybody. Even dating back to going back and watching him in high school. I know he's a really good track guy, but it kind of reminds me, Carey, and you, Eddie, George, you'll remember this guy as well. But like dating back to, the wide receiver from West Orange Stark, Carey, that got kicked off the team and bobbed in like 2010.
No, Tristan Haynes is a freshman. Trey Franks.
Trey Franks.
Trey Franks.
But
yeah.
there was a Haynes on that team too.
James Haynes. That's the guy you're thinking of that also got kicked off. Yeah. And Trey Franks was like a 200 meter guy, but every time you'd watch him in space, it just never popped like that. That's kind of my deal with Gavin. Like, I know he's fast, but I just don't see it. Blaylock, you're like, okay, maybe you could run him some swing passes. You could, because he can catch the ball. He's a good receiver. Get some stuff where he's out in space and get him moving north and south as quickly as you can. And that speed will play against anybody. Like, I mean, he can really, really run. So I think that's an interesting possibility. I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to come in and be like, bully Xavier Robinson and Taylor Tatum out of his way and start taking 15 carries. Like, I don't think he's ready for that. But I do, like, I could see him having a role for sure.
That happens a lot. I memean, you get track guys, put them back on kickoff return, and it never develops into anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, James Haynes could fly too, and I mean, I think he. I'm not going to make a bad joke here, but yeah, those two guys, it didn't work out that well.
They just need. I just think they need someone to become like Xavier Robinson was down the stretch of last season. They need somebody that's really reliable at running back.
I think he's their best back. I'm just every down back.
What do you think of him putting on almost 10 pounds? Is that good or bad? Or?
I mean,
I think he looks good, but it was surprising just in that I think the initial reaction coming out of last year was he needs to drop a couple.
Yeah,
but he's
I'd have
one
to
of those
know,
guys.
I'd have to know what the body weight, or the body fat.
I also think
he might have leaned up.
We also take
muscle.
that roster like it's gospel, like the weights and stuff on there, and they're definitely not. There's definitely weights that are inaccurate on there.
I think Xavier is one of those guys that you don't realize that he can move so well for being that big. And I guess for a sake of just a terrible comparison, a little bit like a Jerome Bettis that was just so massive, but then he got the ball and was like, oh shit, this guy can move really well and he has great feet.
The guy he always reminded me of was the 90s Fazan, the big running back.
Jermaine Fazan.
Was Jermaine? Is that right?
Gumbo.
Jerome or Jermaine?
It was Gumbo.
Yeah, Gumbo, absolutely. Like, I remember, like, cause same kind of deal, like kind of top heavy, but his feet were just incredible. But yeah, again, I thought Xavier showed stuff that I didn't know he had last year. Like, he surprised me with how explosive he was at times. Like, I knew he was powerful. I knew he had great feet. I knew he saw it really well. But I was like, he's never going to hit the home run. And there were times last year where like, whoa, boy, he about popped that. That about, that was almost really big. So, but guys, I agree. Like, to me, if Oklahoma's going to hit its ceiling in the running game, Taylor Tatum needs to be part of that equation. Like, he is the guy that, we talk about, like, okay, Torrey Blaylock could be a receiver. Xavier Robinson can be physical. This guy can hit a home run, that kind of stuff. He can do all that stuff. Like, he can be that guy that, like, you don't have to show your hand by a personnel switch. Like, he can do anything you want him to do. He just got to freaking take care of the football and look like he knows what he's doing, which I think we all agree at times last year it just didn't seem to be the case.
Look, it's kind of the same story for me every year in a running back room. It's like you have a guy like Javonte Barnes who looks like a Greek god, and he gets out there and he just, for a long time, and whether it was injuries or whatever, he never seemed to really make it happen on his own. Like, when he got into the open, he wasn't breaking tackles. He wasn't running through things. Xavier Robinson got the ball last year, and you're like, holy shit, look at that. Like, he runs through contact, and people cannot get him down, and he really makes people look silly at times just, bouncing off of him. Like, you can't tell that stuff until you're in, live action a lot of times. And, like, the spring never tells us. Like, we thought DeMarco Murray was, unbelievable because he had that, spring game when he was a redshirt freshman, and we all thought he was going to be really good, and he was. But, sometimes it's just like with Kennedy Brooks. It's like until he played a lot more, you never really saw what was special about him. But then the more he played, the more special he looked. Running back's just a weird position to evaluate.
Well, especially based off 25 minutes of a practice that we never see.
When nobody tackles to the ground, yeah.
Well, but what gets confusing to me is it shouldn't be, Carey. Like, there's few positions to me that, like, because somebody asked me this question in board chat today, like, what are the positions that where you see the fewest 5-star busts, you see the best equivalency of, like, we thought this guy would be great, he became great. Like, we can list all these 5-star busts at Oklahoma, but then you can talk about Adrian Peterson, DeMarco Murray. Like, you go down the list and you're like, that dude hit. That dude, Joe Mixon. Like, you go down the list and you're like, yep, those guys hit. So it's a little confusing to me why it does seem to be so hard. Like, because it doesn't. Like,
I guess we need to go ask
There
Kel
never
Gundy.
seems to be that step. Yeah, maybe.
I'm just trying to think of, like, Jeremy Calhoun, probably the biggest bust that we've covered in our lifetimes.
He's the only one I can think of. And you know who was not high on Jeremy Calhoun? Your boy. So I was ready for that one.
Justin Johnson was more of a. He was kind of more of a just everybody loved him because he was the recruiting guy and rallied that class.
And he wrote that letter when he committed to Bob Stoops, and everybody got so excited about it. And the thing was, Justin Johnson, just like Justin McKay, was a linebacker. If those two would have just played that position when they got there, they'd probably be NFL guys. They were that kind of talent. Justin McKay could have been an absolute freak at linebacker.
But, I don't know. It's such an up and down. I'm thinking of, like, Quentin Griffin in my mind right now. Like, could that happen in this day and age? Could you find just a guy out of nowhere that could become that good?
I think one was in New York City, wasn't he? Ashton Genty? There wasn't a whole lot of buzz for Ashton Genty coming out of Frisco, Lone Star.
Boise did that with, what's his name from Frisco, too, though? God, I always forget that guy's name.
Who?
The guy? Are you talking about the running back that proposed in the OU game?
Ian Johnson?
No. The one that played in the NFL for Boise.
That threw the punch
for the Dolphins.
Blunt.
No.
LeGarrette Blunt?
No. Well,
no,
I know who you're talking about.
It's an African name.
Yeah, we always forget his name.
I know who you're talking about. I can't place it.
He went to Frisco Reedy, I think.
Wait, Blunt played for Oregon.
Right. Yeah, Blunt did play for Oregon. Way to go, George.
Yeah, he punched the Boise State guy.
Well, somebody just said punched guy, and I thought of that guy. At least I didn't name a Tristan Haynes for.
I was one name off, and there was a Haynes. All right.
Yeah, but that's like when somebody gets arrested and they're like, I only shoplift. And it's like, well, this is like the 70th time, though. Now we got to take you in.
Jay Ajayi.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
God, I could not find it. I was hoping.
But Jay Ajayi, I don't think
one.
he had a single scholarship offer but Boise. Or a D1 offer.
Wow, he was born in London. I didn't even realize that. He played at Frisco Liberty.
Liberty, not Reedy, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's one of, like, that was back then when Ajayi came out, he was probably like just the third high school in Frisco, and now they have like 14.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That area. Like, every time you go, there's like there's 3 new neighborhoods you haven't seen since the last 6 months.
Well, just wait for Prosper to be the next.
Yes, it's going that way.
Yeah.
Josh,
by the way, real quick, just thoughts on what you've seen. I mean, obviously, Jaron Canick's been
that's
the
where I
story,
was going.
But just the tight ends, anything intrigue you about any of the guys that you've seen out there?
I'm kind of slightly intrigued by all of them just because there is so much unknown. And in terms of, Will Huggins has kind of made a little bit of noise here early. I think the Jaron Canick thing is quite fascinating. And we talked to him on Monday. George, I know that you said it might be the best 25-minute interview session that we've had with a student athlete. Said all the right things. I don't know how you couldn't watch that and go, I'm cheering for this guy. I want him to succeed. He's kind of should be a staple of like what college football programs used to be.
And oh my God, everything I thought I hated about college football now, he actually showed me.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's still, that stuff that I believed in is still out there.
I just don't know what the realistic expectation should be for Jaron and for that entire experiment. I think he looks fantastic. Like, just from a running routes and catching the football standpoint, I thought it looked seamless. It looked like he'd done it before. But from a blocking and everything else that you're going to ask a tight end to do, I don't know what the reality is there. And it's not because he's not going to try. Like, he's certainly going to work his ass off. I just don't know. Like, is it?
Can I say one thing about what I've seen out there? I don't hate what I've seen from Will Huggins.
No, he's a big dude.
He's a monster dude.
Another 6'6" guy, right?
And he moves well.
He's played a lot of football too.
He moves a lot better than I would have thought. Like, you compare him to like an Austin Stogner, he's a lot more athletic.
I hadn't thought about that.
Okay, that's interesting.
I don't
Post surgery, Austin Stogner, or post injury.
I mean, post staph infection.
I would say I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't agree that he's more athletic than Austin Stogner. I think he's very similar to Austin Stogner.
I think he's more
athleticism
fluid
wise.
than Austin Stogner ever was.
I don't know.
How much bigger?
Granted, these are
like I would imagine he's 20 pounds heavier than Stog.
He's tall. 6'7".
Okay, I was thinking he was bigger, like had a lot of mass to him.
The tight end position is, I think, going to for sure have to be a wait and see. I just have no idea what to make of it. Obviously, I wasn't just incredibly blown away. I thought
we haven't, and to be fair, we haven't seen him do much.
No, they were like doing individual blocking drills. So, like, I thought that, I don't know, 275 next to Davon Mitchell's name is a little bit worrisome.
Hey, guys, we're looking for a center for Oklahoma. Maybe you got your guy.
I think Troy Everett said on Monday that he started out at 275.
Yeah.
I just, like, he looks great. I just don't know, like, how's that move at 275? And from what we saw with them just running through, basically errors on route at half speed, I don't really know what you can tell there.
I don't either.
If I told you guys over under 20 receptions for the tight end room this year, what are you taking?
Over.
But I would say not many of those would be to Davon Mitchell. I'm just not. Look, until I see it from him, I'm just not going to believe in it just yet, because I think he's too heavy, and he looks, honestly, when we've been out there, it how do I say this? It looks like he still has a ways to go before he is counted on as somebody that is going to play a lot.
As an observer, and this is probably why we're never going to be allowed into practice again, because you take away these grand observations. It looked like he was disinterested, and I don't think that that's the case. He might have had a bad morning and was just going through the motions. But from the moment we were out there and for the 15 minutes that we saw him, it was just disappointing. I think that was like the big takeaway for me. And again, he could end up being the starter, win the Mackey Award, and people are going to come back and be like, "Oh, see what you said from your 15-minute observation
from the beginning."
It's also interesting that, like, we haven't, at least I haven't, heard anything. Like, we've heard like positive reviews about Jaron Canick catching a ton of passes in practice, which tells you, like, how's the guy that was just playing linebacker a couple months ago catching passes in practice, and not the 5-star. That's been on campus now for over a year. And that's the part that it's like, well, wait a second. And again, sometimes it takes longer for guys to develop. And, I'm not counting out Davon yet, but I do think that, Canick has a chance to play a little bit. I think the Carson Kent kid.
I'm not giving up on Caden Helms if he can stay healthy.
I'm telling you. I
he
think
looks great.
He will be gone from OU 5 years from now, and I'm going to be like, I still think Caden Helms is going to play some football at OU.
Yeah.
But they at least put him in the game a little bit last year, after he got back, and he's out there full go with everybody right now.
I mean, he played against Navy. So, that's my thing. Like, okay, I thought Davon Mitchell, when he made all the comments after the bowl game about Joe John Finley, and it was like, man, that's really mature. That's a really I wouldn't have expected that from any freshman. I'm not singling him out. I'm saying, like, that's just a very thing to take that on his shoulders and say, I wasn't ready. Like, I kind of thought we'd see this thing for the last 2 months, and he was going to show up at like 255 and look great and really just, kind of take ownership of everything. And for him to come in at 275, I'm not saying, maybe that was the plan. Maybe they're like, we want you to be an inline guy, like, you know, and then we're going to take some weight off of you, you know, whatever. I don't think that's the plan, but I don't know, so I don't want to rule anything out. But it just seems a bad omen to me. Like, what's it going to take to get you where you need to be to where you become a serious threat?
Yeah.
I hope he proves us wrong.
No doubt.
Same. He's a great kid. I like Davon a lot. It is what it is.
All right, last thing I want to talk about, just some practice observations before we move to Pro Day. Obviously, I mean, it sounds, George, you've kind of been the lead on this, but Giovanni Gibson sounds like, you know, a potential, and you've talked about it in the practice report, but seems like he might be the real deal.
Yeah, the connection between him and Mateer is very real. It sounds like they've made a lot of big plays early on in practice, and we'll see, you know, if that continues throughout spring. And, you know, we hear that about guys all the time, and it never actually comes to fruition. Like, I remember last year, we heard a little bit about J.J. Hester. I think it was in fall camp. It was like, J.J. Hester's making some plays out there. But this seems a little bit different in Giovanni Gibson. Like, and you saw the clip they put out, and just his size, his ability to run, I think is something that stands out. And I talked to his high school coach this week, and he's got an incredible story. He actually played quarterback coming out of high school, and was an extreme athlete. And he wanted to play receiver, but his high school wasn't very good, and so they put him at quarterback, and was just a phenomenal athlete. His grades weren't very good, so he ended up having to go the JUCO route. Had a good, 1 year at Monticello in Arkansas, some small junior college.
Yeah.
And then
I actually think that is a is it a JUCO or a D2?
I think it's a JUCO.
Okay. I know that they play basketball, I want to say, at the D2 level, but neither here nor there.
Maybe it is D2. I don't know. But 1 year there, and then the only school out of JUCO was Arkansas Pine Bluff to give him a chance, and he went there and had a monster season. And
incredible.
He actually was. I guess I don't want to give too much away for the story I'm writing this week, but it sounded like he was going to go to SMU, and then he went on the OU visit. And OU, and this is before Mateer even came to OU, they were like, hey, we're going to get a really good quarterback. Just trust us on this. And that's why he ended up committing to OU. Yeah, great story. And, it sounds like he's been crushing it. The other guy that I've heard at receiver that's played extremely well so far is Satania, the Arkansas transfer. He's getting a lot of time in the slot right now because Burks hasn't been practicing full go. And so Satania's really stood out in the slot. And then the other guys, Manny Choice is a name that's come up a few times. Elijah Thomas has come up a couple of times. So those are some of the guys at receiver that I've heard.
It's interesting, and obviously just 3 practices in, but we really haven't heard a whole lot about that sophomore group that, I would imagine is
Kearney,
expected to make. Okay, then Zion Kearney.
Yeah, I've heard some good stuff on Kearney. Even Carey I think, is getting some good reps. But Zion Kearney of that group is certainly somebody that I think has
that makes me feel a little bit better.
Yes, yeah.
By the way, Arkansas Monticello, Division II.
There you go. Eddie was right.
Okay. Hey,
great women's basketball.
Also, the
I'm
Boll
sure.
Weevils is
Really?
The what?
Of course,
Arkansas Monticello Boll Weevils.
I like that.
And Giovanni's going to be a kid too.
fantastic.
I'm writing this story this week, so people can check it out on Soonerscoop.com. He will be an easy kid to root for. I mean, he comes from nothing, and for him to get to this point to play at a school like OU and hopefully play well is a really, really big thing for him and his family.
He's got a very aw shucks vibe, but it's totally natural and genuine.
Yeah, and we talk about NIL and changing college football, and I know a lot of people, still aren't a fan. He is somebody that I think that NIL is very positive for his family.
That's cool.
So,
all right,
Guys,
go ahead, Josh.
I just know with Giovanni Gibson, I was trying to think that clip that OU ran on the deep ball in the indoor from Mateer. Did anybody else watch that? And Eddie and George, this may predate you guys, so this may just be 2 old guys talking here. Carey, I saw Brandon Jones. Like, that's what it looked like that big lower half and real physical, and I was like, man, because again, he ran over, he basically ran through Jacoby Johnson, who is probably OU's biggest corner. It's not just like OU's biggest corner. He's a big guy. That play, I don't want to make too much out of one friggin' clip, but it impressed me in several different ways.
We need to see if he can hit a baseball 500 feet like Brandon Jones could. And then we'll decide.
I will say he apparently, according to his high school coach, so I don't, sometimes high school coaches exaggerate things, said that he can throw a football 70 yards standing flat-footed. He said he's got a cannon for an arm. Giovanni Gibson.
See, Bauer Sharp could have caught it if he could do that.
Well, now you've ruined all the trick plays for this year.
I think, George, just a whole wing of the playbook is gone now.
My apologies.
Nobody wants to see
Mr.
trick
Arbuckle.
plays after last year. Like
That'd be funny if that's all Ben Arbuckle did for the entire first quarter was just run a bunch of trick plays.
And see, that's
against
how you
Illinois
pull
State.
off a spring game, is you just run a bunch of trick plays.
Well, maybe that's what they're going to do at the Crimson Combine. Just running trick plays.
Hey, that's what I mean, and you've got the perfect tight end to do it. Jaron Canick, trick plays, just all day, every day.
That would be sick. I actually would enjoy that.
All right, let's get to the pro day yesterday, a day that was really not great. I mean, probably one of the weakest attended pro days I've ever been to. And, it's just Danny Stutzman lifted. That was it. Nothing from Billy Bowman. Nothing from Ethan Daniels except for media interviews at the end of it. But I will say, really happy for my boy Trace Ford because he looked fantastic.
Yeah, he was great. And I think that the biggest thing for him, and he said it afterwards, he's going to just have to get an opportunity with somebody, and they're going to have to trust that he's going to be healthy enough to make it through a season. I think we all kind of agreed, though, walking out of there, he's going to get invited if he doesn't get drafted to somebody's camp, and maybe he can make it because he is incredibly athletic for how big he is.
I thought he was clearly the most explosive, most athletic guy that was out there doing drills yesterday. Woody did some good things. I thought in DB drills. But the bag work, everything just looked fantastic from him.
What's going to happen with DJ Terry?
I thought he had a good day.
I would imagine he's going to be somebody that gets an opportunity with somebody.
Looked like he really worked hard.
He has
to
the
slim
size
down,
too.
Sure,
he has the size that somebody will sign him, and he's got pretty good tape. So,
and what, George, did you say the ranking would have been for Trace Ford? And
he would have been second among defensive ends at the NFL Combine. His 40 time would have been second, only behind James Pierce from Tennessee, and his broad jump and vertical jump both would have been 8th out of 21 guys. So pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And look, the thing
maybe he worked himself into the draft.
His injury history, I don't think
he won't get drafted. I don't think. But if he's going to make a roster, it's going to be on special teams. If he can go run down on kickoff, be on punt team, like that's how he's going to make a roster. Or I think he can make a practice squad. I think that should be his goals. Get on a practice squad somewhere.
That'd be dope.
He could absolutely be like an up back kind of guy, George. Like he could fill that role.
There was a receiver. Did you ever get wind of who the guy was wearing the Buffalo shirt?
No idea. No idea.
Buffalo shirt on.
He was catching for Casey Thompson.
He had a one-handed catch that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think we have video of it. I have no idea who that guy was. And I almost wonder if he wasn't even a college guy. Hey, can you come?
They needed somebody so Jake Roberts had time to take breaths.
Yeah. Well, and I think to run a little bit longer route than a tight end would.
Yeah.
I have no idea who that guy was.
I thought Jake caught the ball well. He looked fluid. I mean, for what we've seen from him. I mean,
he's another guy.
I
bet he gets invited to like a mini camp or something. And can you take? I guess you really need to take advantage of that opportunity if you could get that.
He needs to, if he's going to make a roster, he needs to just like beef up and be just a badass blocker
and keep the mustache.
He just tested. Yeah, and the mustache.
Mustache was fantastic for sure. But outside of that, was there really anything that stood out to you guys?
I mean, honestly, I think my biggest takeaway outside of Trace from Pro Day, by the way, Arkansas hasn't scored in 9 minutes. They've blown like a 20-point lead. First game out at the SEC Tournament. I think the biggest takeaway from yesterday for me was just seeing all the current guys and just seeing how they interact with each other and just kind of being around them. And I don't know. Mateer's just I don't want to sound so cliche, but it just seems like he gets it. Like he stayed the entire time. You don't have to do that.
And you could see everybody just kind of gravitates toward him.
Yeah. I want him to be the guy. There's no doubt about that. I did, and again, we talked about when we were talking about Kendall Daniels, but he's just so massive. Like, I did not remember him being
How
that
thick he is.
That and just like tall. Like, I didn't remember him being 6'5", Josh, when he was coming out of Beggs.
Yeah. And I guess it always stood out to me because he was just so damn skinny.
Yeah.
Like, he was so lean. But yeah, you're right, Eddie. Like, he's a big kid. I'd love to see him in person now because I know he looks nothing like the human being I have in my brain.
He's completely transformed his body. It will be quite interesting to see not just how much he plays. I think we all think he's going to play, but just how they use him. I almost feel like in the back of my brain, I have this idea that Brent's going to invent something for him, and it's going to be like, well, why were we ever worried about this? Oh, the other thing that I thought was like super interesting, and it's not pro day, but coming out of Monday night's media availability, Bob brought this up. I was kind of taken aback by R. Mason Thomas, Kobe McKenzie, Robert Spears Jennings when asked like if you were surprised that Brent had named himself defense coordinator. It was almost like they were rolling their eyes and like, yeah, duh. What would you expect to happen? I don't know. And we certainly expected it, but it almost makes me go back into like last year and hearing Kobe talk about Nate Dreiling in the manner that he did. I don't want to say they're happy that Zach Alley's gone. There was something going on behind the scenes, it feels like. I don't know. And this is a completely an opinion that I have formed based on nothing.
Well, I think this goes back to, and I think I reported this, but like once Zach Alley left, the plan was Brent was going to take over. Like
Sure.
And I think he had maybe relayed that to some of those guys, especially the guys that maybe were like an R. Mason Thomas that was considering leaving. I think he was like, hey, I'm taking over. I'm going to be the guy. And then the Jim Knowles stuff just came out of nowhere. And that's why it became
very well could be the case.
I think that's
I'm probably reading too much into it, but I do think that Kobe was very high on Nate Dreiling and the way that he talked about him. I don't know. It made me almost think that he likes him more than what he was getting from Zach Alley. I have no idea if that's true or not.
All right, I want
starting rumors.
Want to tell everybody we do have just a fantastic recruiting report up on YouTube right now. And I think it kind of got screwed because we had such a day on Monday that we recorded, then we had to go to practice and for the viewing, and then we had to come back, and then we had to go back out there. So most of the stuff didn't get up till like 9 o'clock, and I think some people might have missed that. But go check that out, the recruiting report on the YouTube channel, because it's very, very in-depth about everything from the future freaks. But Josh, any fallout, any kind of... I know, like you said, that Steve Wilfong and Chad Simmons did such a great job of getting a hold of everybody, and you had a lot of information up on the corner as well. But since Monday, it's Wednesday now, Eddie and I are having a hard time keeping track of the days this week. Over the last couple of days, any real big revelations that came out of things?
No, I'd love to be like, yeah, there's been this wild adventure, but no, I don't think it's been that so much as... Again, like what I like the most are the guys that it seemed to really hit with were the quarterbacks, the offensive linemen, and the defensive linemen. Like those are the guys that I fully admit, like they were the guys I tried to work on first, tried to talk to first, and I know obviously with help from Chad and Steve as well. But like every guy I talked to was like, well, I can't wait to get back. I'm already working on my official visit. I think, you look at a few guys that really, I thought it really impacted. I think it changed the story with Drew Evers quite a bit. And I think that was a guy that I wasn't taking that seriously anymore. And it's not that I didn't think Drew liked OU. I know he does. But it just kind of felt like he's going to go somewhere else after all that happened with Nick. Like they'll just do something different, and that may still be the case. I'm not certainly not saying he's headed to OU, but I do think OU's a more real contender than I thought. Another guy I would probably say, the two guys I would say on the defensive line are Tavian Branch, the big defensive lineman from Pennsylvania that we've talked a lot about. I think Oklahoma really hit it out of the park with him. Like I think that was a key visit. He's going to come back on June 6th for his official. If you made me pick right now, I think I'd pick Oklahoma for Tavian Branch. It's kind of where I'm at on that. I think they've done a great job. We know about Todd Bates. We know the work he does. And then the other one I would say is Brian Harris, the big defensive lineman from Florida, was a Maryland commitment, backed away from that kind of middle of February, and since then his offer list just kind of exploded. He's a 6'4", 290 guy, plays some edge on tape. He is a very intriguing guy. And again, a guy that I think Todd Bates has kind of made a priority of, and they've connected with him. And he's another guy. I can't wait to get back. This is going to be one of my visits. And he talked about the environment of Oklahoma. I asked him point blank. I haven't run it yet, but I'm going to be kind of finishing up Woke once we are done with the pod here. And he's got a quote where he talked about the environment of OU and the relationship between the coaches and the players being something he hasn't seen before, kind of unique to OU. And that's the kind of stuff every guy, coaches and players, it's close. But when they start differentiating that from other programs, to me, that's a tip-off. I think that's usually a good sign. And we'll watch. He's going to take more trips. Again, I'm always cautious about getting people too excited. But I think those three are guys that I think Oklahoma in the 2026 class really made a big impression on.
By the way, Josh, last time I saw him was camp last year, but as I'm walking by Zane Row at practice on Monday, I'm like, good God, he's getting bigger.
It's crazy where that kid was when we saw him for that first time before he committed even to OU, and to where he is now. It's almost like watching Kendall Daniels transform in a way. I bet what do you think he weighed right now? I bet his shoulders, how big they were?
265, I'd put.
Mm-hmm. I bet he's gained 45 pounds in between the last time that I saw him, which was not too long ago. I feel like he was just up here for a game. It's crazy though. And now you can start seeing he is going to be a top 25 type guy, top 15.
What would he have been back in summer camp, Josh? 225 maybe?
I think I got
225, 230 be my guess. And I saw him at Under Armour a couple weeks ago, so I can relate.
Crazy.
He's huge. And again, he's one of those guys that is unique. We talk all the time about okay, you recruit for this position. Guys, he's going to be a 275-pound senior probably playing defensive end, and he could grow into being a 290-pound 3-4 defensive end, or he can stay around that weight, get faster and more explosive, and be a 4-3 defensive end because he is that uniquely gifted to be that kind of guy. He's a mutant. He is a legitimate contender for the number one player in Texas in 2027, and I can't say it enough. When he talks about relationships, he talks about Miguel Chavis. Miguel Chavis is his guy. He loves Miguel Chavis. So I think OU will always be right in the middle of things. Guys, actually, Carey, a guy I didn't get to I think we talked about in the recruiting report, but I hadn't really had a chance to talk with him, was Jonathan Hatton. He and I have spoken a little bit since then, speaking of kids who decommitted. And again, man, he just loves Oklahoma, and he talked a lot about he and Ben Arbuckle getting a lot of time to really get more comfortable and kind of seeing what Ben Arbuckle's vision for him would be in that offense, and kind of how he would fit in. And I again, it feels very much like Jonathan Hatton is buying into the vision OU has for him.
Ben Arbuckle might just be an assassin. He is.
He's pushed all the right buttons.
Yes,
he hasn't obviously called the play yet. That's ultimately.
But you never got any.
Is that important?
You never got any kind of Josh, do you ever remember a recruit being yeah, I talked to Seth Luttrell, and boy, I totally turned around. What I'm thinking, how I view Oklahoma.
I think they have very different personalities too.
Yeah,
though.
They do.
I think Ben's one of those guys, and we, met him when he came over here to the office. You instantly know it's okay, yeah, this guy's very mannerisms wise, he gets it. He's going to be very good on the recruiting trail. I can see why guys want to come play for him or love him that have played for him.
But then you see him out on the practice field, and he's a madman, storming around with so much purpose, and it's he's checking out everything that's going on around him and saying something to people you want to do this, you got to do that, no, don't do it like that. His fingers are on everything out there.
I heard he spoke, I think it was last night, at the president's leadership class at OU, which is the freshman, leaders or whatever, and was phenomenal. Speaking to students at OU. I don't know if that means anything, but
just a very he's very laid back, but at the same time, you can tell there's an intensity about him that
I can see how he gets along so well with players.
Sure. 100%.
I'll just say I'm not overhyping anything, but I feel very confident in saying OU's going to have a legitimate offense this year. Like credible offense.
Again, I know that we'll say it time and time again.
Let's say top 10, top 15, top down. I'm just saying. I think we're gonna look out there after a couple of games.
Give me T40.
And
T40
and
up.
be like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. This is fixed.
I want it to get to a point where it's like when the offense rolls out there, it's like, okay, I know that the punter's not coming. I know Jacob Ulbricht's not coming out in 3 plays.
By the way, I didn't realize Jacob Ulrich is 6'5".
He's massive.
Huge.
And he's the most punter-looking punter of all time.
Enough. Yeah.
The hair, everything.
It's crazy.
Also, I'm betting on Liam Evans winning the kicking job. I want that noted.
We have noted.
Really?
Yes.
Is that based on yesterday or Monday?
It's based on just the first few practices.
And what you're hearing?
Yeah. I think they really like Liam Evans.
He was very highly ranked coming in out of Moore High School. I mean, he did it. I always get the two mixed up. Saylor is the kicking guy?
Yes, he's the kicking guy.
And then the punting guy is...
Wait, yeah, Chris Cole.
It's Coles.
They do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, either way,
Yeah,
he was very
Cole
highly
both.
ranked. He was very highly ranked coming out of high school.
Cole kicking and Saylor. Yeah.
Yeah. I always love the story about Cole's kid that was the big recruit a couple years ago. They wouldn't let him be a punter because he had like size 14 shoes in like 5th grade or something. And so they were like, you can't be a punter. I was like, I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently large feet are not helpful in punting.
I had no idea.
I didn't either. I thought it was one of those stories just caught my ear funny.
Josh, could it be said that the greatest punters of all time have small dicks?
Oh, my God.
Are we putting 2 and 2 together? Is that why... Now, follow-up, is that why Kyle Tucker became a kicker?
As a guy with a size 14,
what did I
size
say?
13
Kyle Tucker?
shoe,
Kyle Tucker's going to hit 50 home runs for the Cubs.
Oh, God. Why do we have to talk about that? That's... Although it sounds like that trade may work out well for both our teams, Eddie. The Astros seem pretty happy with their return. So
the Astros are going to be interesting this year. We'll do our full Major League Baseball breakdown next week. The season starts. The Cubs just got to Japan.
Josh, speaking of old things that have been around forever, any idea what Max Emfinger is up to these days?
Oh, no. I mean, somewhere probably in Louisiana, just writing stories that no one's reading anymore. Like just doing full, 2,000-word updates that have lots of nonsense words in them and just going on.
I think
his best life is what I would call it.
There was a time there we checked in on him and he was running like a Christians-only recruiting service.
Oh, God, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That was a weird... That's one of those guys that, could never exist now.
Well, think of all those USA Today peoples. They had... USA Today... Eddie, we were talking about somebody. He's on the... They just brought him in to be on the college football playoff committee for the Steve Weiberg.
Yeah, Weiberg. Or what's his name?
Weiberg?
Weiberg?
I can't even remember now. But they're so... I mean, they brought... what's his name? They brought Jeff Sagarin into the public consciousness.
Well, Carey, you think about it. It's Emfinger back then, Bobby Burton, and Lemming.
Yes,
Bobby Burton's easily the most adjusted human being of those 3 people. And Bob.
Well, there's also Alan. There was also Alan Wallace from Prep.
From Super Prep.
Yeah.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
What an industry it spawned.
Oh my God!
I mean, if you're talking about Tom Lemming, I would say that it spawned the plastic surgery.
Tom Lemming, yeah.
Oh, speaking of, I have a great story to wrap my kids into it. Lainey and I are at Target last weekend. And I just happened to look back, and there is a woman behind me that has spent far too much money and far too much time in plastic surgery. And we walk out, and Lainey goes, "What happened to that lady?"
Hey, you've raised your kid right. At least you've got her. Didn't ask in front of her.
Yes. Oh my God. That easily the hardest thing about having a young child is please don't talk about the man with no leg in front of the man with no leg. Just give us a minute and we'll tell you all about it. But yeah, so I had to explain, like, and God, everything in dad life is like a teaching, like, this is people who focus on how they look, honey. Like, we don't worry about that. Like, we don't do that. And instead of just like, that woman's crazy as shit and put herself into like 47 surgeries.
Oh, God. That's get on the kids. Get on the parenting. Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else you guys wanted to hit on before we get out of here today?
Big game tonight. Big hoops tonight. Incredible win down in Austin. I would say unexpected win in Austin, especially when it got tight there in the second half when you go through a 5-minute spell from like the 7-minute mark to the 3.5-minute mark of not scoring. But hey, when you're coming from where this group's coming from, any win and being able to close out a game is fantastic. The 3 for 4 missed free throws made things even more interesting in the second half there. But got an opportunity tonight. I think if you win tonight, you beat Georgia, you're into the NCAA tournament. You lose, it's going to be a couple uncomfortable days, even though you probably maybe still get in depending on how everything goes across the country. But it's all out there. It sucks about Sam Godwin with the, Bob reported the grade 2 MCL sprain. Probably 4 to 6. Hopefully, if they were to make the NCAA tournament, it'd be cool if he could just suit up and go through that. But it'll be interesting. I think tonight is going to be it's a massive game for the program to be able to kind of have it still within their grasp of go out and win, and everything else takes care of itself.
Also, I'm glad that we're kind of getting back to normalcy a little bit. It's hasn't been as toxic, with the couple of wins and people getting to watch the women play well in the SEC tournament. Softball and baseball have started, and that's kind of leveled things out. But we're heavy into the spring. But I guess I'm saying all this because you just got to let it play out with Porter, and I think now that we're kind of back to normalcy, you can see that this option may not be as good as that option. And let's see if they beat Georgia tonight and are an automatic into the tournament. Don't have to do the play-in. Like, everybody's going to have their opinions, but I just like it that it's not just crazy.
I fired
town
him 2 weeks
right
ago,
now.
and
I know.
Since then, they've done nothing but play spectacularly.
There's something to giving up on something.
Yeah, I think that there is. It's like you release it, and then they play like they have over the last 5 games. And if they had been doing this like the entire time, we wouldn't even had that conversation. But when you're coming out
lost to LSU, and they wouldn't have. They might have pulled out the Ole Miss. Well, they wouldn't have pulled out.
But we also have the right to fire him again tonight if they lose by 20 to Georgia.
1,000%.
Sure, yeah.
1,000%.
If it looks terrible and they regress so poorly that they just get their heads handed it to them, I mean, yeah,
it's a hour to hour thing. And I will say that like what Jeremiah Fears has been able to do here over the course of the last 5-6 games, really, he's been fantastic. And you could say that there's not a whole lot of freshmen out there that are doing it. I know that we threw it out there on the Hoops Report, but Mike Halka threw out a stat that like only Cooper Flagg and Jeremiah Fears have done so far this year. And I think I have it written down. I brought my pad of paper in here. Cooper Flagg, Jeremiah Fears, the only freshman to average 16 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.5 steals a game, which is incredible in like the grand scheme of things, and especially after we were having that conversation. It's like basically we have to talk shit about somebody, and they listen and they start playing well, because we've done that now with
through the ether. The
Porter,
message gets
Jeremiah Fears, probably Davon Mitchell. Put a future bet on him to win the Mackey now. It's been really, really good though over the last couple games, or the last 5 games, even the games that they've lost combined 4 points. And you might see Kentucky again if you're able to win tonight. So get ready. It's going to be a late night in Nashville with the 8:30 tip-off. That probably won't tip off until like 9:15.
I know George has got to get out, or Josh has got to get out of here. But real quick, George, women thought they played, admirably against South Carolina. I mean, you watched them play Texas, and
I thought they played well.
OU looks like they played better.
I mean, South Carolina is going to be the number 1 overall seed in the women's tournament, and very likely, or maybe not very likely, but I think they have as good a chance as anybody to win the whole damn thing. They may not lose another game. So to lose by 18 to them, and really they were in the game, at times throughout until right before half. South Carolina won a 14-2 run, but yeah, they're playing great basketball right now. They should make the Sweet 16. Like, that should be the expectation. going into this thing. And then, and I know the NCAA tournament's all about matchups, but in women's basketball, if you're hosting and you're a 3 seed, like you should make the Sweet 16, and we'll see who ends up coming to Norman. But I like this group. Jenny Bronchek and Reagan Beers is such a matchup problem for so many teams. Peyton Verhulst is going to have to play well. Skylar Van, all of them. But I do think this is the year that Jenny gets over the hump.
Lexi Keys to get going.
Yeah, they got to get Lexi Keys going. Especially if they want to, one, to make the Sweet 16, but if they want to go make a real run and make an Elite 8 or, who knows, a Final Four, depending on what draw you get, Lexi Keys is going to have to come alive and start hitting some of those threes. She just has not been as efficient lately. So, and they're going to need some other girls to step up. I mean, you saw the sophomore Landry Allen come in and give some big minutes for them.
Nowhere.
Yeah, in the SEC tournament. So that's what the NCAA tournament's all about. You need some unlikely heroes.
It'll be fascinating to see who gets sent here too. I know that Gonzaga was in the middle of that mix, and they got beat on Monday in the semifinal of the West Coast Conference. So Michigan State, I think, has been thrown out there a couple times. UNLV got beat. They got upset in the semifinals of the Mountain West.
There's still a lot to play. I think are all the women's games done now?
There's mid-major stuff going on. But the Power Four is done with their conference tournaments.
Yeah, so their selection show, I will say, is, I think, 7 p.m. Sunday night on ESPN.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, and look, we're going to have a stickball this week, so we won't go into baseball or softball here right now, but we're over an hour and a half.
Incredible weekend for OU softball, beating South Carolina, and baseball, we'll see. I mean, they had a good weekend, took 3 or 4 last weekend, lost the Dallas Baptist game. If it makes any Oklahoma baseball fans feel better, Oklahoma State blew a 5-0 lead down in Dallas yesterday, Tuesday night. So we'll see. It should be kind of fun. South Carolina, definitely not the upper echelon of the SEC, but it's a good kind of dip your toes in the water to see what this thing's all about before you really get into the schedule.
All right, that's going to do it. Josh, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I have absolutely nothing to offer.
I just saw the Bengals are bringing back Samaje. Did I miss that by a day? Yeah,
nice.
I did.
You missed that by 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Happy about that. That's cool.
I got confused because you guys were talking about yesterday. He tweeted something out, and then somebody said...
Well, somebody tweeted something out about him signing with Tampa Bay, and then Lick, the general manager for
came out and said,
Tampa, quote-tweeted it and said, this is not true. There's no recovery from that. You have to delete your account.
Yes.
Yeah, and change professions.
All right, that's going to do it.
Possibly.
We'll be back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast. Don't forget, check out the recruiting report on the YouTube page. Also, stickball coming up before the week is out as well, and we'll have another around the corner for you at the end of this week. So thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you right back here next time on the Unofficial 40 podcast from SoonerScoop.com.